Hey, it's Matthew Holt, another THCB Spotlight here, and I'm here with one of the real OGs of health tech and digital health, and people call me an OG, but I think I met Steve Brown back in, I want to say 1996, 97, when he was bringing around the Institute for the Future, where I was working a video game about how to deal with your diabetes, which eventually evolved into Health Hero, which was one of the, for those of you who go back away, in the 2000s was one of the very first sort of at-home tools that people use to manage CHF and diabetes and God knows what else. So Steve, good to see you. It has been a while. Before we get onto what CureWise is and what you're doing now, and probably talk about the 15 years you took off to go and work in Hollywood or whatever you've been doing in movies. Just remind people what Health Hero did and who it did it for. And, you were early on in that whole thing, which was then called disease management. So remind me about that part of your health tech past.
Yeah, we were very early, I'd say painfully early in this aspect of healthcare that we probably all take for granted now, which is it kind of makes sense to monitor high-risk patients at home and identify problems earlier rather than waiting till someone's admitted to the hospital. So we were very early on in this field of remote patient monitoring and chronic care management. So early that we were also the pioneer in helping get the language about chronic care and remote patient monitoring into an act of Congress, into the George Bush's healthcare reform in 2003, which sort of defined a lot of the terms for remote patient monitoring and chronic care management. And we were able to do that because we had as a startup, we won the national contract with the VA to go from pilots in Florida to a national contract of actually doing kind of a more modern version of chronic care for heart failure, diabetes with complications, and mental health, and a lot of other things.
Oh, very cool. So yeah, Health Hero was definitely a pioneer back in the day. It got sold to Bosch, right? The German, I guess, auto and God knows what else they make, parts manufacturer back in the day. When did you actually leave Health Hero?
When we sold the company, I'd say that the premise for the acquisition was Bosch's competitors were like GE and Siemens, and they all had giant healthcare divisions, and Bosch didn't. But Bosch made a lot of the sensors that went into cars and iPhones and everything else. And the idea is if Bosch were going to be in healthcare, they should be a platform. They should provide a platform for the industry. But I'd say that timing in the market, everybody was sort of thinking that we should be a disease management company, which turns out to be kind of an archaic idea. What our idea all along was like, we need this to be part of the practice of medicine. Right. Doctors should be able to get paid for telehealth. And so when we did our work in Medicare, and we actually ended up getting a contract directly with Medicare, where Medicare paid us and we paid doctors, because we needed to model for, doctors should just be able to do this. You shouldn't have to have some other entity out there working for the health plan. It just should be part of the practice of medicine. It just makes sense. Well, now that's kind of how we practice medicine. I have more telehealth visits, and I get more texts and emails and from the clinic than I do anything in person. I mean, it's all remote. So that's a much more efficient way of doing care. So we were early in that field, paved the way for the industry. But when we sold the company, it was, it's kind of painful if you need an act of Congress. It's a painful thing to tell your investors as well. It's not a metaphor. It's like, really, we do need an act of Congress. And we did end up getting one, but that's still just the beginning of the journey. So, I was like, life's too short to do another healthcare deal. I went in a different consumer entertainment, film, documentaries, fun, interesting things. But when AI when COVID shut all the film stuff down, and then when AI came out, I kind of dove back into technology and realized, oh, this is actually a really interesting time to be in technology.
Absolutely. So you somewhere in that coming back, you started working. I think you were hanging out with Peter Diamandis, who is pretty well known from his role of the X Prize and Singularity, and now doing all this longevity stuff. He keeps on sending me emails about all the 727 supplements he's taking and all the weight training he's doing and how he's going to live till he's 150. Not sure I want to do that, but we'll see. But I know you're working with him and on some of the AI stuff he was doing. But I mean, you also then went on your own health journey, which I think is what happened, where CureWise comes from. So tell us just what happened to you, and then that'll, I think, inform a lot of what happened with what CureWise is up to.
Yeah, this is not a mission that I chose. It's a mission that chose me. I was working with Peter Diamandis. I still am working with him and advising on Abundance 360, and I presented at the last three of their events. I've shown AI stuff, and actually it was like a year and a half ago. I showed multiple agents debating each other, a chain of debate. One of the examples I gave is, well, this is one of the ways of mining the intelligence that's built into these models, or that the knowledge that's in these models, and to advance medical research. That was one of my examples I gave on stage, by essentially having agents trained in different ways debating each other and coming up with new ideas within a kind of a mission and guardrails that I'd set for the agents. I showed medicine, and I also showed physics. Originally, I studied physics. I did a documentary on the guys who won the Nobel Prize for astrophysics a few years ago. But this is like, how do we have this amazing tool called artificial intelligence that has managed to compress the entire knowledge of humanity, this sort of collective consciousness of humanity, into this black box called an LLM. It's amazing what's in there. But the question is that when you ask different question in a different way, you get a different answer. So, like, that's not super comforting. As we're dealing with medicine, it feels like, well, it's supposed to be deterministic, but it's kind of unpredictable in the answers I get. Well, when I started looking at medicine, I was actually in the hospital, and had been doing a bunch of stuff in education, where the diversity of ideas is great because it's a way of, like, learning different things. But when you get to medicine, do I really want, different answers depending on how I ask the question? Generally, that doesn't give you a lot of confidence. But I started saying, well, what if we flip the script on that? And, what if diversity of agents is actually a better way of mining the knowledge that's in there and sorting through it to make sure you didn't miss anything, and to figure out where the knowledge converges for you. You might ask ChatGPT about, hey, my medical condition, and depending on how you ask the question, you're getting different answers. And that happens when I take different points of view with my medical agents. There are different answers, but then we go synthesize all those and we say, hey, where do they agree? Where do they disagree? And often it's like you get an answer from one and a little bit different answer from another one, and I'll show you this. And then if they talk to each other, they say, hey, actually, that's a good idea. Thanks for reminding me about that. They do converge on things that are actually quite useful. And in the end, that's really useful in helping you know what to talk to your doctor about and knowing what to ask for. And the treatments that I'm on right now are not the standard of care.
So tell me a bit about,
not the things that the doctor said, hey, here's what you should do. They're things that I said, well, how about this? How about that? Like, I think I need this. And, like, the doctors were if I asked for something crazy, the doctors would say no. But, generally, if you have a good idea and you're on the right track with it, it's really helpful for you to be able to advocate for it.
So tell me about, you were sitting at home doing fine, and then one day you started feeling sick. What was the symptoms that you were, what was the what put you in the hospital?
Well, so for about a year before, I had been feeling like, something's off, and then I had a doctor, and I ended up going to a cardiologist, and then a cardiologist and a gastroenterologist, and I was kind of like, test everything, gave me the full body scan, the endoscopy, the colonoscopy, the heart. I want it all. I just turned 60, but I'd also lost 25 pounds.
Right.
And I was having abdominal discomfort, and some things that seemed like this might be some cardiac thing. And, it's like, I got to figure out what's going on. I want to start a new company. I'm ready to start an AI company, but, like I don't want any excuses. Test everything. I got to figure out what's going on. So I went through that and had, scans and tests and I had everything. And then I had like a massive amount of data in my chart, but I mean, literally the gastroenterologist was like, I think it's gas, take gas X. Like if I was a screenwriter, I wouldn't even been written that because it's like, like no one who's going to believe that. And the cardiologist was like, it's a fishing expedition and, maybe you're just depressed. And yeah, it's like, I'm depressed that you
I'm
can't
impressed
figure
with
out what's
your
going on.
answers.
But it's like it turns out, there's a lot of biology going on. There's a lot of biology that are in these tests, but like a lot. This happens very, very often in cancer. You have all these tests, but things just don't feel like specific enough. It's hard to see the signal and the noise.
Right.
So what happened then is the fires of Los Angeles, the Great Fire of January 7th and 8th, 2025, burned down our, whole part of town, including our house.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And we're like, we ended up being displaced from LA. We're in Palm Desert near Palm Springs, and we're staying with friends. And I ended up going out to dinner at the Ritz-Carlton and getting a big steak dinner. I finally sort of had my appetite back and I had a big steak dinner. But then the whole weekend was just writhing in pain, that there was something going on, that I thought I was obstructed from the steak. Nothing was going down, everything was coming up and nothing was going through me. And I was just in pain. By Monday morning, I didn't have my leftover Percocet from my kidney stone where might have powered through it if I was still back at home. But all that stuff burned. So Monday morning, I went to the ER and I said, I need a CT scan to rule out obstruction. Okay, I kind of knew what to ask for. But they did the CT scan. They found a bunch of stuff that my CT scan just a couple weeks before they didn't see or didn't really, sort of missed. And it's like, and they did a bunch more tests, and then the hospitalists are really known for being blunt and direct and having this wonderful bedside manner. But my hospitalist was fantastic. It's like cancer until proven otherwise. And I'm like, oh shit. So I get admitted to the hospital, because that's fast track for getting biopsies and everything. If otherwise it's like, hey, we can fit you in 2 months. It's like,
Yeah.
you're in the hospital, stuff happens faster. So I got admitted to the hospital. I was really, really lucky that they admitted me to the hospital and didn't say just do all this outpatient. Like they realized that, hey, either the CT scan was, the records were switched and the one I had a couple weeks before, or what I had was really aggressive, because there was stuff that just wasn't there. So I got I got admitted to the hospital, got a biopsy, a lymph node biopsy. It's like, they couldn't find cancer, but they found some other stuff. And then I got a bone marrow biopsy. I got about, and stuff got cytogenetics, get sent off to the Mayo Clinic. And, now it's like 2 weeks to kind of get all the stuff together. And it's like, okay, you have this rare blood cancer that's related to multiple myeloma, treated the same way as multiple myeloma, but in some ways more dangerous. Like it's immediate, like it literally said, like, high risk of morbidity and mortality. It's like in the notes and the record. It's like, well, nobody said that to my face. I find it in my chart record, but it's because the cancer cells actually are creating a toxic misfolded protein that was accumulating in my heart, my kidneys, and in my gut. So I was having, the issues I was having, there are cardiac issues, there were gastrointestinal issues, but they just were not, they were not, we didn't ask the right question.
They were
It was a
caused by,
fishing
right?
expedition, but we were fishing in the wrong pond.
Right.
So, now that we kind of identified, okay, here's the right pond, I immediately got on the chemotherapy cocktail, which is the first line standard of care for multiple myeloma. And which initially in the first month was through doing, the numbers were coming down and it was working. then it started to slow down. It started to slow down more than an exponential decay. It was like, oh, it's like, it's not going down anymore. What's going on? I started looking again with the AI as my assistant, but looking into the cytogenetics and looking into the all the details and the attachments on my chart with AI, helping me interpret and understand, what does all this mean? And realizing that, oh, the standard of care is probably not going to work on me. It's not going to get me where I need to be. But there's other stuff, there are other drugs that are much more targeted to my cytogenetics. So I started asking for those drugs. And, the initial response is it's not the standard of care, it's not approved for that, it's off label, your insurance is never going to pay for it. So I started going to, I need to find people that, look, it's pretty rare. I'm hardly any show up where I am, but what about UCSD? What about UCSF? What about Stanford? Well, it turns out Stanford doesn't take Blue Shield, so I can go to Stanford, but I got into UCSD and UCSF, and then I got into Mayo Clinic, and I flew out to Mayo Clinic. What motivated me to fly out to Mayo Clinic is the day after I gave the talk at NextMed that you saw, where I talked about the kind of diagnostic side, I went to my new cardiologist at UCSD, and I was concerned that my response was flattening out. And he said something was very, very motivational to me. He said, look, don't think that these are the only tools in our toolkit. There's always heart transplant. And I'm like, oh boy, like I need to get to the Mayo Clinic. So, I already knew, I already had a pretty good idea of what I thought I needed, but I needed to find doctors who actually were doing this because it's off label and had some experience with it. And I went to the Mayo Clinic and got worked up there and with one of the top people in the world for my condition. And she said, yeah, I agree that this is the right thing for you to be doing. And I confirmed. My second opinion is that's the right thing. My doctor at UCSD also agreed. She prescribed it, and she wrote the appeal letter or whatever you needed to do to get the insurance company to pay for this off label. And it makes a lot of sense for the insurance company to pay for it because it's super expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than a heart transplant.
Right.
So, I ended up getting onto the right treatment protocol because I learned about the condition and I learned about my own medical record using AI. The doctors still, prescribed the treatments. The doctors still, but, I was a more informed patient and I knew what to ask for.
So fast forward, not very long, a few weeks really, you've built this into a product. So why don't you show us what you've built and, essentially how you take all that different knowledge and from varying knowledge into different questions and put it together. So show us what CureWise looks like.
Yeah, and I don't want to play. I just did this a couple of weeks. I've been working on this for like 2 years. I was one of the first people to get an OpenAI API key. I've been working on this and iterating this. What I did is I pivoted it to
away from physics or space exploration to what you were doing.
Away from say more education and entertainment,
right?
To asking medical questions. And there are really two parts of it. One is like what we're doing today is AI powered tools that will help you understand, help you be able to ask questions and understand what your medical chart might mean and help you talk to your doctor. The longer term vision of this and the mission of this is that someday cancer is going to be cured. The pathway to curing cancer is precision medicine. It's rather than carpet bombing cancer, it's narrow it down to the thing that specifically targets the specific cancer that you have, and doesn't do all this collateral damage. That's if we do that, that's called a cure. And the only way to really get there is through AI. I mean, every president since Nixon has had some version of a war on cancer, and they never, it's like, why, if we can put a man on the moon, why can't we cure cancer? Well, the fact is that the way we develop medical knowledge, the randomized control trial, assumes you've got like a whole group of people that are, as close to identical as possible, and we vary one thing. Well, in cancer, especially as you get closer and closer to to more precision personalized medicine, everybody's different.
Right.
It's like everybody has a unique genetic mutation that the planet's never seen before. First of all, it's your unique genes, which are unique on this planet, plus the unique genetic mutation. So it's until you get to where it's really targeting the genetics of what you have. It's a different paradigm for the knowledge, and that paradigm is something that AI can thrive on a diversity of case studies, but a randomized controlled trial needs uniformity. So, the paradigm of the way we kind of build medical knowledge now, well, is sort of hitting a wall. It's already hitting a wall in even with what I have, like the doctor I have at UCSF, he was recruiting patients for a clinical trial to a phase 2 study on the combination of stuff that I'm taking. And I'm like, I need to talk to this guy because he pulled the trial or canceled the trial. So I'm like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, I couldn't get enough patients for it. He needed 10 people. It's like I couldn't get 10 people. There's a different paradigm for medical knowledge with AI. And the challenge is that, you ask the question a different way, or you have a different point of view on it, you get a different answer. So how do I make that something that's actually useful? Well, I created agents that have, like, okay, look, let's have a bunch of different points of view. So here are a bunch of different points of view, internal medicine, cardiology, neurology, oncology, and I can go talk to all these different points of view about my own medical record. But what I really want to do is I want to run all the points of view, and I want to synthesize that information, because the fact is, a diversity of points of view is good if that's helping you cover all your blind spots, and get a more comprehensive view. So here I'm going, and I'm choosing all of the tests, all of the knowledge of my condition as of late 2024, and end of the year, all the information that my prior doctors had.
So just to check on that, you had to take from my chart and upload
yeah,
notes and
so
upload a bunch of stuff into this, right?
yeah, so it's not yet fully integrated with all that. So you basically download your medical record, then you upload it here, where then you own your medical record.
But there are a number of people doing that side of things, and
I
can imagine you can plug into them pretty easily. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll make it easier. We'll have it fully integrated, but right now it's the old fashioned way where there's no dependency. You can just download and upload your data, and try to make that easy to do, drag and drop your files into here. But right now it's like, okay, so I'm choosing a model, I'm choosing a scenario, and I'm going to say, like, okay, I want all these different points of view, and I'll use the quick diagnostic template. It's like, oh, like, this is like the instructions to the AI from all these different points of view. So when I run the analysis, what it's doing is it's like asking that question in parallel with all these different points of view. So, some of these are like, invented characters, from the future. And some of them are like kind of modeled on like a hematologist and an oncologist, or cardiologist. And here my AI cardiologist is saying, it's okay, I understand what's going on.
By the way, is that in Claude? Can you say, treat this as though you were a cardiologist?
From this, and I'll show you where I compare the models next.
Yeah.
But so this is there's different. Okay, well, let me go to where there's some differences. So the hematologist says, oh, I think it's CVID based on all this. It's like I think it's this, or maybe it's pre-malignant hematologic malignancy. The oncologist says, oh, plasma cell disorder, early multiple myeloma. That is a different answer to the same data, because I changed the point of view.
Right.
And you kind of would have thought, well, maybe the hematologist would have gotten it, because this is a hematological thing. And but look, they're not that far off. It's like, oh, their number two is kind of the same. But here's the AI oncologist is saying, you need to get this test. Well, if I'd asked for this test a year ago, I would have been diagnosed a year ago.
Right.
But I didn't get this test, even when I said test everything, I didn't get that test. But so this, when the AI oncologist turned out to be 100% spot on to exactly what I had and what I needed, and looking at the same data. And here, even though it's like, hey, I think it might be something else, but from a differential diagnosis standpoint, I still want you to get this test. I would have asked for that test, and I would have gotten that test, and I would have been diagnosed. So but this is again a whole bunch of different points of view.
But just to be clear, the real life oncologist you saw didn't suggest that.
No, the real life oncologist I didn't have an oncologist, I had a
No,
cardiologist,
sorry,
a
yes.
gastroenterologist. But they were suspecting like, we're going to
They,
test
they didn't
for,
realize that they needed an oncologist at that point,
well, they
right?
did all these cancer tests. But they sort of did the ones that they knew, but they didn't do this one.
Right.
And so now what I'm doing is I have like, 7 different points of view with 7 different answers to the same question. Now what I want to do is I want to take another agent to kind of synthesize that and say, was there any consensus? Was there any convergence from those different points of view? Because, like what do I learn? So the consensus is that, hey, you know what? Tier 1 is like, definitely get this test.
Right.
And so like, what the heck is this test? Like, I want to get this test. So, but this was a process of looking at, diagnostically, like, what test should I ask for? Because you know what? You'll get a range of tests, but if you go into the doctor and say, well, what about this test? Kind of like when you're talking to ChatGPT, so what about this? And ChatGPT says, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. You're right. It's like you get, if you ask good questions, you get better answers. So I can go in and I can, let's say I want to go talk to my oncologist now. I can go continue this conversation and go kind of like, now I'm in chat mode. I'm chatting about, what is this light? I can basically now I can go and talk about this and go further, and and this is I'm having an educational conversation. I'm kind of rehearsing conversation that I might take to my doctor. I might like learn a bunch of stuff, so I could say here like, what should I ask my doctor, or I might I guess I let it run, but it's like giving me a bunch of stuff I need to learn about. It's giving me a list like, hey, this you need this test. Here's why it's urgent. Here's why I should get this test. It's like, I don't even know what to ask next. Well, okay, well, what question should I ask next? Like, I don't even know where to start with this. So now this is the AI looking at the conversation and saying, hey, here's some good questions to ask of the AI. It's like, oh, what questions should I ask my hematologist, oncologist when I see him? How should I prepare? Well, should I be worried about infections? Should I do this? Should I do that? What if it turns out to be multiple myeloma? What's the prognosis? So, okay, these are useful questions to ask. Now, preparing for my visit, hey, this is super useful. If you make a little cheat sheet for yourself and say like, okay, I'm gonna do my homework and prepare. You have, maybe you only have 10 minutes with your doctor. How do you make every one of those minutes
Right.
count? Well,
Right.
educate yourself so that you kind of go, figure some things out so you can ask better questions. And I did this repeatedly with my own treatment. That's how I got on to the drugs I'm on. And then I'm on the drugs and I'm thinking like, okay, now I'm really got this thing, licked. And then a friend of mine, I sort of saying it's a variant of multiple myeloma, but I just say it's multiple myeloma is the word that's common enough that people I say it's like it's related to multiple myeloma. And a friend of mine said, oh, multiple myeloma, my brother just died of that. And then he said, well, he didn't die of multiple myeloma, he died of an infection. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm immune compromised. I'm going to conferences. I'm like,
Right.
like I could die of pneumonia or COVID or something. And so then I'm again talking to the AI about, well, what do I do about infections? And I'm learning things like, well, hey, I have, I shouldn't even ask you because I haven't gone through the whole, I haven't been diagnosed yet. But with this test from late 2024, well, I learned a bunch of things from the AI that, hey, you know what? There are things you can do about this. Okay, I'll wash your hands, wear masks, all this stuff. But it was from one of these conversations. He's not saying anything here, but what is he saying? That's because I'm in an earlier stage on this. But it was through this sort of conversation process, like he's saying, what about this? What about that? I end up on a prophylactic antibiotic for community acquired pneumonia. I'm like, hey, my body's not making antibodies right now. So, I put this in there. My, I'm presuming a little bit more advanced knowledge than end of 2024 right now.
Right.
So but since we're already here, I'll just do this. My body is not making, and I do. So then I learned about there's this thing called IV immunoglobulins. I learned it from the AI. It's like, oh, well, you can actually get infusions of this IVIG. You can get immunoglobulin replacement therapy. Well, I didn't know anything about that. So I started
Right.
asking about that. I go to my doctor and I say, well, I think I need IVIG because look, I can tell from my other numbers, and my labs are much more advanced after this. I'm learning from my other numbers that it's like, okay, in the process of wiping out the cancer, it's been very successful. I've also wiped out the things that make my antibodies. What can I do about that? So, anyways, I get prescribed IV immunoglobulins. My insurance company's paying for it. It's like, hey, you know what? This is a good idea. You should get this. Let's prevent infections rather than waiting until you get one. So anyway, so there's a lot of it that's about, like talking to your agents. You can have your agents talk to each other. You can, kind of, I'm kind of helping you rebuild your personal health record and put it together in a way that's useful to AI. Like I say, you can do the same thing with models. You can say, okay, well, let me use these tests, but how does GPT 4.1 compare to Claude, compare to Grok, compare to DeepSeek? And of course, they all have different answers too. But how do I synthesize that? Because there's a tremendous amount of medical knowledge in there, but what you get out of it is unpredictable. So what you're looking at is multiple points of view. Where's the convergence? Because you can learn something from the convergence. So I'm doing that. And look, this is still sort of for the advanced user. The next iterations of this is like, the beast mode button where we just run all this stuff a whole bunch of different ways and synthesize it and figure out where the convergence or consensus is, because what that is it's a way of weeding out the sort of the unpredictability, the hallucinations, the stuff, it's like it does convert. When it converges, it's really good. So then also I'm doing this like, hey, apply this to a clinical trial search, and what trials might I qualify for? What can I learn from that? So, so I'm creating a very, I'd say, robust tool set that helps you be an advocate, helps you understand your medical record and what's going on, helps you advocate for things. That's the wise side of CureWise. The other side of it is the research side of this. Like as we get more advanced AI and as we get more case studies, and as people participate in the research side of it, how do we learn from a large number of case studies, things that we can't even learn from a clinical trial because we can't find enough uniformity to actually do a clinical trial. But how do we learn from that? How do we actually advance personalized precision medicine on the research side? So that's the real mission of the company, is to, when I was in the disease management business, I mean, I knew like people don't want disease. How do we use the data with people's permission to be on truly what people want, which is let's advance medicine. We don't want just more tools. We really want better solutions.
Fantastic. All right. So 2 quick questions to finish with. The first one is so other than someone has to write the script, if this gets good enough, do we need a doctor? Is this,
yes, you need a doctor. You need a doctor. I think it's, the doctor is always going to be the human in the loop. The AI is deterministic in that these are all like known states, but when you add up 1 trillion parameters, it's unpredictable. It's like the free body problem. Small change here leads to big change there. So AI is unpredictable when you start doing complex things. My solution for that is a swarm of agents and a kind of chain of debate among the agents to find the convergence, which is really about finding the best knowledge that's there. But if you look at the way the output is it could be this, it could be that. Maybe you should get this other test, or maybe you should think about this, talk to your doctor about this. In the end, every drug I'm on, everything I'm on, the doctor's prescribed. And I need the doctors to prescribe that. And I want the doctors to prescribe that. But my conversation with my doctor was completely informed by AI.
Do you think that the typical doctor, I mean, I know there's open evidence and a couple other programs now that are out there, and other tools out there, which just trying to sort of replace up-to-date reviews into LLMs. And do you think, or people are just using, Claude or whatever for drive-by consults now. Do you think the doctors you've been working with have been keeping up with these kinds of tools? Are they ahead of you now, or are you ahead of them?
Well, it's impossible. I mean, like literally, physically, mentally impossible for a doctor to keep up with the knowledge generated in medicine.
Sure, but are they able to keep up? Are they using these types of tools to
So,
be
so,
keep
so
there,
there,
you found?
well, there is a whole field of let's create more advanced AI-enabled decision support for doctors.
Sure.
So I believe that that's happening and going to happen, and it's going to be fantastic in helping doctors be better doctors.
But in your experience of what you've gone through, have your doctors been tapping into this kind of thing? Or
well, when I went to the Mayo Clinic, my doctor said that Mayo Clinic is all over AI, and they're doing all kinds of stuff with AI. And I had an AI like, hey, we can like look at your EKG with AI and see whether or not we can probably find. Let's it's like $5,000, but like yes, there's tons of AI happening, but they also said at Mayo Clinic is, hey, what you're doing is like actually different than what we're doing. There's a lot of things that are happening, and like the easy things are, hey, let's just transcribe the conversation and automate the making of the notes. Well, that's easy stuff. So there's a lot of machine learning AI where it's like an imaging. So we had 100,000 images, and we had the labels of, well, what was there? Can we now predict the label from imaging? So that's an old school AI. What's different, what's new is the medical inference especially from case studies. And that is a frontier. And that is something where I think there's immense potential. That's the area that I'm diving into, because like if you have 100,000 case studies and you use that in AI model training or fine tuning, you can do inference from that. Whereas 100,000 case studies, you're trying to just search it or whatever, you're not going to. We don't know how to we don't know what to do with that. It looks like a bunch of anecdotes. So it's a different paradigm for knowledge management. So I think that's super interesting, and that's frontier. So that's the area that's most interesting. But I was thinking, so there are companies dedicated to doing AI decision support, and there's a lot of work in that field. I'm sure there's a lot of AI going on with insurance companies saying, hey, let's use all this data and let's help make better decisions on that side. But that's in the interest of it's more like, hey, it's like, how long till this guy's going to be on Medicare so we don't have to pay for him anymore versus are we going to have to pay for a heart transplant if we don't do that? Okay, well, we did the math on it, and the insurance company has a different set of objectives.
Sure.
So, but doing it from who has the patient's back, who's doing this on the patient, the patient's perspective. There's a lot of kind of people using ChatGPT for it. That's happening right now. But to really do this in a way that is more, I'd say, more useful and more focused, especially around something as complicated as cancer. That's the mission that I'm taking on.
All right. So 1 minute on where you are as a company and organization. It's been you building this out, and obviously you build a lot of this stuff yourself. What's the sort of next steps to get other people onto CureWise.com and and start using it and figuring out how you build up those case studies?
So it's in a private beta right now because it's very kind of closely managed in the state that it's in, but we're making it more and more, I'd say, consumer friendly. I'm just in the process of incorporating it. I have a number of people that want to invest in it, so we're doing the seed round and then going through all of the things that we need to go through to launch it publicly, which includes all of the compliance review
Sure.
stuff and making
All,
sure we're on all of
all,
those
all
things
of that boring
and
stuff you
making
have
it
to get
more
through.
all the
Right.
stuff you have to all the necessary things you have to get through, but also all the things we need to do to make it more useful and easier to use.
And the goal is to get thousands of those ends of ones on the system using it.
To get tens of thousands of people using it as a tool for themselves, while in parallel with that, building the process and the methodology and the models to use the data that people give us permission to use in to advance the research side of precision oncology, precision medicine. And how it's already worked for me personally is an example of precision medicine. I'm on a much more precise regimen now than the standard of care, precise in that it's mapped to my situation. As treatments advance, you need to get better and better of like mapping your cytogenetics to the right kind of cocktail so that you get a better result. And that's going to become, that's a research challenge to get that right. And AI is a phenomenal tool for that. So while we're doing tools for patients like me, we are also building a research side of this to advance the practice overall. And we'll work with biopharma companies and diagnostic companies on that side of it as well, because everybody wants to figure out how to get to N of one medicine, because in cancer, that's truly what you need.
And lastly, how are you doing? Are you
I'm doing great. I mean, I'm actually, I mean, I did all these graphs and charts projecting my treatment response, and now that I'm on the right regimen for me, I'm down to a level where I've not getting any more damage. I mean, I'm down to where like but now what I need to do is keep it that way and to kind of rebuild the healthy immune system. So, I think I'm going to be okay. But well, it was 5 months ago. It looked quite different, but I'm feeling pretty good about it now. I feel like I've got a handle on it. And this is what's different. When I was doing chronic care, remote patient monitoring, it was always other people's problems, but our country needs this, otherwise we're going to go bankrupt. Well, we still haven't fixed that part of the problem, but now it's like, wow, I need this
I need this.
for
Yeah.
it definitely changes the point of view when it's when you're in the middle of it. And it makes me really, I'd say, much better with the product because I am customer number one.
Fantastic. Well, Steve, it's great to see you. It's great that you're doing well, and what a fabulous and fascinating journey you're on with CureWise. I've been talking with Steve Brown, digital health OG from God 3 decades ago, and now running CureWise, which you got a chance to see. And hopefully, you'll be able to come back in a few months and show us how you've advanced and when the company's really off the ground. But thanks for taking time with me today.
Well, definitely great to be here and great to be back in healthcare after taking a over a decade hiatus from healthcare. It's actually a really, really exciting time to be in healthcare because we're on the
Absolutely.
cusp of major advancements.